AM 1260 KLYC and the lessons of life continue here on the morning show. It's time to turn the page to a cup of coffee, and we're going to be talking about the sheriff's office race. And in the studios this morning is Mr. Joe Shipley. Joe, glad to have you with us today. Sergeant with the sheriff's office.
Yes, good morning.
Glad to have you with us today. You're running for the office of sheriff. Now, have you been with the sheriff's office for 21 years?
Yes, a little over 21 years.
Tell us a little bit about your background. Why are you interested in law enforcement, and a little bit of your work history?
Well, I actually started my commitment to service over 30 years ago when I was 15 as a volunteer firefighter, EMT, and eventually a lieutenant with the Amity Fire Department. I left the fire department after high school. I worked for Evergreen and was going to Chemeketa for fire service, and felt like there was something more I needed in my life, and I went in the Army as a military police officer, and where I earned the right to join the VFW, and I'm a life member of Post 10626 out of Dayton. Juan Palacios convinced me I need to be part of that organization, and proud of it. I came back home and worked for farmers and odd jobs until I joined the sheriff's office in 1992 as a reserve, and was quickly hired as a control room technician in the jail full-time, where I worked for about a year learning basically the paperwork of the jail and what it takes to manage all of those inmates and their files and warrants and things of that nature. And then I tested and competed and was selected to be a patrol deputy in July of 1993, where I've served as a detective, contract deputy for various cities, Sheridan, Lafayette, and was assigned to YCENT for 4 years, working primarily narcotics. Came back to patrol for a few years and was promoted to sergeant, and currently I'm serving in the jail as a jail sergeant.
What is it about law enforcement that you enjoy? Obviously, you like the job. You've done it for a while. You've had a few different tastes of different aspects of it: jail, patrol, detectives, narcotics.
Well, there's several different things I enjoy about it. Number one, I enjoy the people I work with. It's different every day, different challenges, different aspects of the job. There's things I don't like about it. I don't like dealing with the death and things that happen with overdose and motor vehicle crashes and children. But as a traffic reconstructionist tech, I've seen a lot of that, and I've learned to deal with it. Dealing with people getting out on the street and trying to solve problems, looking for alternative solutions to the different aspects of this career. One of the more current things being in the jail is I've noticed that we have a heck of a mental health issue in this county, and a lot of people in our jail have mental health issues that probably shouldn't be there. And there's a program, CIT, crisis intervention, that's addressing that, but it just seems like there's something more that could be done, maybe partnering up with other organizations to try and solve that problem.
Do they put them in jail simply because there's no place else to put them? And it's secure, and at least they're gonna hopefully not hurt anybody.
Well, sometimes it's just the last ditch effort to try and get this person the help they need. Sometimes it's just there's no other option. This weekend we had a female that the patrol deputies were dealing with all weekend. Ties up our dispatch center, ties up patrol. Things that they could be doing, they're having to put off so they can go deal with this individual. And finally, as a last effort, she ended up, or I shouldn't say she, but person made her way to jail. Where now the correction staff have to deal with her. And I mean, we'll deal with it, but that's probably not where she belongs.
What do we need? Do we need a secure facility that deals specifically in mental health issues? Or more counselors? What do you think?
Probably mental health and alcohol and drug detox and rehab. They seem to tie up a lot of our resources in the corrections facility. Somebody comes in, they've been drinking for 3 weeks, a month, or even just a week, and they come in at a 3.0 or a 3.2, or just these astronomical numbers when you're talking about alcohol, and we have to put them on a 15-minute watch, which means a deputy is checking on that person every 15 minutes. Well, the facility's a couple hundred yards long, and if a deputy is having to walk down there and check on that person every 15 minutes, that's time taken away that could be used on other aspects of the job.
I know there's a number of individuals that are trying to deal with the issue of mental health, and that's one of the things. That's one of the drivers also in healthcare, as they're looking at healthcare costs. And it's interesting how so many of these things click together with healthcare, over corrections, overcrowding jails, and then just some of the issues going on in society. And then usually what happens is they wind up in two places. They either wind up in the emergency room or the jail, and some nights they wind up in both places.
Yeah. It seems like over the course of my career, I've noticed that law enforcement has become the answer to a lot of society's issues, whether it be counseling for kids or counseling for adults or marriage counseling. It seems like whenever things are falling apart, the first thing they do is they call 911 and ask for a deputy or a police officer. And the knowledge that an officer needs nowadays compared to 20 years ago in all of those areas has just grown.
So you're needing to be a more well-rounded deputy than you did 20 years ago. You need to have more like mental health issues and how to deal with. I guess another example of current society and how things have changed is we see. I don't know if they call it military court, but there's veterans coming back from overseas that have served multiple tours. They have significant issues with PTSD. What surprised me a lot is I've covered a number of veterans' issues and stories and what's going on, is there's still a lot of Vietnam-era veterans that are suffering with PTSD. But what we hear a lot of more often than not is more of the younger guys that are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan that are, they've been put in situations and it's changed them. And sometimes there's a trigger that happens and they react. And sometimes that reaction has consequences, and that's something that that we're trying to deal with on law enforcement and the court side.
Yeah, Marion County is kind of leading the way in that that military court where they're picking up that and trying different things. I've noticed that we have a deputy in our jail, Phil Shadden, who he does a great job of working with veterans, and he keeps in contact with them in the facility, seeing what they need and how we can help them through their exposure to the jail. They still have to be held accountable for their actions, but we don't want them to come back, so we need to offer them whatever services we can to help them through their issues so they don't come back.
Some other issues we want to talk about. But one of the questions we definitely want to talk to you this morning before time gets away from us is, why are you running for sheriff?
Well, I want to achieve a balanced, common sense approach to law enforcement through fiscal and community responsibility. When I say balanced, when I started this career, we did a lot of prevention, education, and enforcement, and there has to be that balance of the three. The more prevention and education we can do, the less enforcement we have to do. It seems like over the last 10 years or so, we've gotten more into strictly reactionary enforcement type stuff. We're short-staffed. We're out there, sometimes 2-3 deputies on the road for the entire county, not counting contract cities. And those deputies don't have time to do a whole lot of prevention, a lot of education. So they're running from call for service to call for service, and reactionary and taking enforcement. I think we need to figure out a way through staffing issues to get back to a good balance, and then using common sense, asking, why are we doing what we're doing, and what do we hope to achieve, and how do we best get there for everything. It's one of the things I do when I'm, in my personal life and my professional life. And I think if we can answer those questions honestly and have a good reason for what we're doing, and then it kind of helps us do what we're wanting to do. And then the fiscal part, it's easy to take the money the commissioners give us and figure out a way to operate within it. But I think we also need to actively seek out alternative funding. There's other programs out there, federal grants, different ideas of how to fund different aspects of our career, and we should be actively seeking those out and trying to qualify and get that funding, so that there's no impact or little impact to the citizens. And then responsibility to our community. There's the big cities of Newburgh and McMinnville, the small cities of Yamhill, Carlton, Amity, Dayton, Sheridan, Willamina, Dundee. They all have a lot of things in common, but they all have things that are unique to their communities. And then there's our community as a whole in Yamhill County, and we need to identify what the specific needs are for each community and how that fits within our whole community, and address how we're going to attack those issues responsibly.
You mentioned the need for more prevention education. Can you give us some examples?
Well, when I started years ago, and I was not a big supporter of the DARE program, I thought it was kind of a waste of time. There was no way of measuring its effect. And Roy Harrell and Derek Tromblot were great DARE officers. Doug Cummins here in McMinnville was a great DARE officer, and they believed in the program, and I think they were actually recognized by the state for their efforts in the DARE program. And probably 10, 15 years ago, that program kind of went away, and just my gut feeling and watching what's happened in our community since then, seems like drug abuse has gone up since then. Heroin abuse is on a huge rise, and I attribute that to OxyContin and painkiller addiction that is very expensive to get on the street, so they turn to heroin. But it's really gone up with the youth. It's amazing how many kids that are in their early or late teens to early 20s that are addicted to heroin, and that would be about the time that the DARE programs went away. It was when they were in their early teens, 9-10 years old.
Why did that program go away? It was very popular. Police officers or police departments all over the country had DARE vehicles, and it was very highly visible, high profile. And then to the rank and file members of the public, it just kind of went away. It disappeared.
I don't know the answer to that. I would suspect that it probably had something to do with funding, because it was a federal grant, federally funded program. And then the other part of that is there was really no way to measure its effect on the community. And I think that we're seeing that now. I think we're measuring it in the negative. I think we can attribute the problems that we're having today to those type of programs going away.
So would you like to see something similar to that program activated here in Yamhill County, even if you have to pay for it with local money?
I would. I think there's other ways of funding it, even through corporate donation or figuring out some other way of funding it. I hate to go to the taxpayers and say we need more money. Taxpayers are already tapped as much as they can get. I think that there's other solutions out there, either through restructure and redesign, realignment of the office. There's some other programs that I've got in mind that will probably unveil later. I don't want to give a tip to my opponents right now,
but alternative funding, we kind of mentioned something here a little bit that kind of leads to something else you were talking about, alternative funding, possibly having maybe even businesses sponsor a DARE vehicle or something in the DARE program where they're given publicity and they help pay for the program.
It works in NASCAR. It should probably work in law enforcement, shouldn't it?
Sure.
I'm not opposed to finding sponsorship for programs. We're probably talking a couple $100,000 a year, and you look at the effect that the drug abuse has on our community. Healthcare costs, insurance costs, thefts, the crime rate that is associated with drug abuse. In the long run, if it reduces some of that stuff, it's probably well worth it. One of the things I also do is I teach at the police academy, and I teach narcotics investigation as well as crash investigation, and those are some of the things that are part of the presentation that we do at the academy is how much crime is associated with drug abuse, and it's everything's tied together.
How much crime is associated with that? Are we seeing 70% of crime, you think, is affiliated with drug abuse? I know it's just round numbers. You just
there's not really a stat that goes with it. There's one of the things I tell the students at the academy is I'll it's just a straw poll. I'll have them raise their hand of all of the students that know somebody that's affected by drugs, and probably about 70 to 80% of their hands go up, and then of the ones that are left, I'll ask if they've ever known anybody that's had something stolen from them, either their car broken into, their house broken into, and generally the majority of them, their hands will go up. And those things are generally tied together, drug abuse and theft.
Interesting. Now, as we were talking about the DARE program, DARE to drug, I can't remember what the acronym meant, but it was police officers and deputies that were talking to kids and teens about not using drugs. Dare to be different, so on and so forth. One of the things I noticed, and especially in the smaller towns from Idaho where I'm from, is that it also gave the local police departments, there's been the term thrown about community policing, where police officers go into communities and make relationships, build relationships, and do public service kind of things like DARE. And what that did was really gave, I think, police departments a good public relations arm into the community, because the community was developing a relationship with these DARE officers. They were seeing them out there trying to be proactive. And one town in particular that comes to mind is New Plymouth, Idaho. They had a DARE officer who was shot and killed on the line of duty. And it was a traffic stop, and there was a young man that shot him in the face and killed him. But what actually happened was the community just responded tremendously, because they really liked this officer. This officer was a DARE officer and had been very, very active in the community. And so you saw the level of relationship between that officer and the community. So the DARE program was good, I thought, and in another way of also developing better relationships between a department and its community.
Yeah, and the sheriff's office traditionally has always been involved in community policing. Way back when they first started, it's they lived in the community. They were an active part of the community. I think when I was a kid and watching Andy Taylor and Barney Fife, that was community policing at its finest. They were out walking the streets and talking to people. They knew when somebody was on vacation. They knew everything that was going on. And when I first started in law enforcement, that's kind of what I tried to do. I got out on the back roads and patrolled, and I used to feel like there was a direct correlation between the patrol teams that worked the highways and went out and worked a lot of traffic, and the amount of criminal mischiefs and burglaries that I would have to investigate the next day out in the rural areas. And I think that we need to get back to more of that, more back there on the back roads where our community is. And preventing a lot. 50% of what we do is prevention. Is being seen prevents crimes. And if we're spending all of our time responding from call to call to call, and then sitting on a highway, writing tickets, we're not out there in the back areas being seen, and that's when burglaries happen and criminal mischiefs happen and thefts and things like that fund the drug problem happen.
And then just as my take on it, but as you're seeing just in the car writing tickets all the time, you develop more of an us versus them mentality, don't you?
Well,
where it's us against, you're writing the tickets, and I'm not trying to put you as the bad guy here, but you're not developing that community relationship.
No, you're not developing the community relationship. The purpose of my belief of the purpose of writing tickets is to gain compliance.
Sure.
You get a lot of compliance out of just stopping somebody and giving them a warning also.
Oh yeah, I've been on that receiving end a couple times.
And sometimes it's warranted. I mean,
And I appreciate the warning.
Yeah.
Yes, I got the message, sir. I will not speed.
and it works. It's
Oh, yeah.
but sometimes a ticket is warranted, and sometimes it's needed.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of the funding things that happens with law enforcement is citations. It's a necessary evil.
Right. So it's 8 o'clock here, KLYC, McMinnville, Newburgh. One of the questions that we want to ask you is there's a number of people that are running for sheriff. Why should people vote for Joe Shipley for the next sheriff of Yamhill County instead of your opponents?
Well, I think I bring a different approach to law enforcement in that I'm looking to achieve that balance and the common sense that goes along with law enforcement, and different options as far as funding and fiscal responsibility and community responsibility. I'm very active in the community. I've been a coach in youth sports for years. I'm an assistant basketball coach at YC, and I think I have a really good understanding of not just what we need now, but what we need in the future. And I have some ideas that I think will be very effective.
And some of those are more prevention, more education, look at alternative funding, and there's other things that you're thinking about doing as well.
Yeah, and then the bottom line is I've spent my life since 15 years old committed to service. I've been a city council member for the city of Amity. I've been a volunteer firefighter, EMT, lieutenant, served in the military. I've served the county and the sheriff's office, and I'm committed to this community and what's best for this community.
Okay. Joe, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add in closing?
No, thank you for allowing me to come talk on your program, and I hope that the citizens can find their way to cast their vote for me.
All righty. Now, also, we will be having another candidate for Sheriff. Tim Svensson will be here in the studios. He'll be here Friday morning at 8. As always, with all of the Cup of Coffee shows and the other programs that we do, not that are non-music programs, but the news programs we put on our news website, OregonPulse.com. This program will go up there shortly. So if you caught maybe a tail end of it, maybe you want to hear some of the things that Joe was talking about, you can go to our website, OregonPulse.com, click on the link that says Pulse Radio, and the news stories and the long-form news program that we generate goes on that website, and it plays in a continuous loop with the stock market report and so on and so forth. So if you want to hear this interview again, you can go to our website, OregonPulse.com, and listen to that interview as well as other interviews from Cup of Coffees in the future. Cup of Coffee is Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 8:30. Generally, it's 2 segments, and we're also open for other topics if you would like us to talk about something specific to your organization or what's going on in your life on Cup of Coffee. Just send me an email at news@klyc.us, or you can call the studio at 503-435-1260, 503-435-1260. Joe, thank you for being with us on Cup of Coffee this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And one of the things we're still working on, we haven't got our cup of coffee here yet. We're working, well, he brought his own cup of coffee.
Yes, I did.
So we had Hula Girl coffee here the other day.
Oh, I missed out.
Well, I missed out, yeah. We didn't have the Hula Girls, but we had the Hula Girl coffee. So anyway, so we're looking for a sponsor. If you're a coffee, a shop owner or manager, we are looking for sponsors for Cup of Coffee. We are putting together a package where you can essentially own or sponsor that day's cup of coffee in your community and have an exclusive for that day for your community, whatever coffee shop you have. And we're interested in talking to you about that as well. For Cup of Coffee this morning on AM 1260 KLYC, KLYC McMinnville, Newburgh. Let's check into ABC News next. Joe, thanks for being with us
Thank
today.
you.
McMinnville Hearing Center brings you the news on KLYC. Hi, this is Greg Arnone. Your hearing is a priceless gift. Don't take it for granted. If you suspect that you're not hearing as well as you used to, please call us at 472-5554 for your free hearing screening and consultation. McMinnville Hearing Center, providing better hearing with a caring touch.